Hi, I'm Kirsten, and I'm currently renovating my 1991 Chevrolet G20 into a camper van. I've been doing this for a little bit over a year now, and I'm almost finished. There are a lot of vans out there to choose from, and it can be a little bit overwhelming to choose what kind of van will work for you. So this video, I just want to make a quick sit down talking video just to explain how I made my decision to purchase the van that I have. And if you are also interested in purchasing an older van, hopefully this can be helpful for you too, to know what to expect and what to look for in regards to purchasing the van and in regards to maintaining it. Okay, so going back to the beginning, I used to live in a truck camper, and then I decided that I wanted to have a van of my own. The truck camper was just too big, not necessarily the inside was too big, but the outside was too big. It's such like a big, heavy, noticeable thing just sitting on the back of the truck, and I wanted something that was going to be smaller, easier to maneuver and drive. I wanted something that drove like a regular vehicle, and I wanted it to be able to boondock and stealth camp. And with the truck camper, it's like impossible to stealth camp. Like if you park in a parking lot, people know that you're in there sleeping at night. Whereas with a van, it might not be that noticeable. So I wanted that factor. Now, I looked on mostly Facebook Marketplace for my van. There's just tons of options on Marketplace, tons of different prices. Let's get to my three non-negotiables for when I was looking for my van to purchase. The first one is that I really wanted to have enough headspace to stand up in. That is one thing I really loved about the truck camper, was that it was just so tall. You could stand up in there no problem. It made it easy to shower, it made it easy to cook supper, it just made it easier to get dressed in the morning. Like, it makes everything so much easier. And when I live in a home, I want to be able to live in it comfortably, and I don't want to have to be crouched down or sitting down all the time. I want to be able to stand up and stretch. So that was my first non-negotiable. My second non-negotiable was that it had to be in good condition. I was not going to buy a van that was breaking down or like falling apart, or if there were things that were noticeably broken or wrong. For example, someone had their van listed and the engine didn't work. I went to go see a Ford Econoline, and there was a huge oil puddle underneath the van. So things like that, if there was something very obviously wrong, or even something that the owner was trying to like cover up and hide, I wouldn't go for that van. And I had my partner with me. Luckily, he knows a lot about vehicles and things to watch out for. If you don't know much about what to look for, you can look it up or have someone more knowledgeable come with you to look at the vans. And I think that is really helpful, because as soon as we left that Ford Econoline, he looked at me and he was like, do not get that van. And I was like, I didn't like it anyway, I'm not gonna get it. The third non-negotiable for me is kind of a weird one, but for me it's important, is I wanted to buy it from somebody who was a nice person. It's just, when you're purchasing something from someone, especially something that is as much money as a van is, or important as purchasing a vehicle is, having a nice, kind connection with the person who owns the van was just really important to me, because I want them to respect my purchase. The van that I have for myself now, oh my god, the family was so nice, like the nicest people I've ever met. And so that third non-negotiable was like really solidified for me. And just some other things, like when you're going to look for your van, listen to your your gut and your intuition. All the vans that I had seen before, it was like they were good, but there was either something wrong or there was just something a little bit off in one area, or I just like was not 100% about it. And in my gut, I didn't feel like this is my van. Now, the second I drove up to purchase Tori, my van now, I laid eyes on her and I was just like, damn, that is a beautiful van. And I felt this connection just from like the second that I saw her parked. I was like, I have a really good feeling about this one. And as I looked at the van and inspected it and test drove it, everything was perfect. All my non-negotiables were checked off, and it was just like I had such a good feeling about it. I knew that that was going to be my van, and I didn't want to look at any others. So listening to how your heart feels and how your intuition feels is a strong point, as well as taking all the logical things into perspective as well. Having a low kilometerage was important because I want to live in my van for years to come, and I want it to be able to last me a while, like a long time. And buying a van that was high in kilometers would not really allow me to get the use out of it that I want. So having a van with low kilometers was important to me. And I think when I got mine, it had 114,000. Another thing that you should keep in mind when going to look at vans is at least have an idea in your mind of what you are looking for. For example, if you want a humongous van life van like the Sprinters, if that's the kind of van you're looking for, and know that going into your search. If you're looking for like an older type of van, know that as you begin your search, because if you're open to every single thing, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming to try to find the van that you want. For me, I already knew the kind of van that I wanted. Another thing to do when looking at vans, trying to plan which kind of van you should buy, is have an idea in your mind of what you want to do with your van. For me, I had this layout in my mind already when I was going to look at the vans. I was just making sure to keep in mind the layout that I had and whether it would work for the vans that I was looking at. And so when I was doing my research and going to see them in person, I was looking at the inside of each van and seeing whether my layout that I had planned would work inside. For example, I wanted my kitchen on this side, I wanted my bed in the back. And it's good to be a little bit flexible because you can always change your layout to the shape of the van if you're willing to do that. Again, it just depends on what kind of setup you want. If you're doing more of the car camping style or kind of a medium build like mine, or if you're going full out Sprinter bougie mode. Also have a budget for how much you're willing to spend on your van, because camper vans nowadays are priced insanely high. So know what the correct budget is for the van that you are looking for, because in my search I came across a lot of vans that were like way overpriced for what they were, and some of the owners were just not willing to come down from that price. So I just had to let those vans go, or I wasn't even able to go look at them in the first place. There are a lot of Facebook groups or Reddit groups, do you call them, where people talk about van life and purchasing a van. And depending on the type of van that you are looking for, people there will be able to give you a good price point of what that van should be priced at. And then from there you can kind of create your own budget and look accordingly for the vans. My absolute cap was 12,000, or anything below that was what I was looking for. The vans that I looked at, just personally for my taste and my aesthetic and what I was looking for, I was looking at 40 Econolines. Those ones I decided not to go with it because you can't stand up inside, unfortunately. You could if you were extremely short, so that hit my non-negotiable. I was not gonna choose a Ford Econoline. I was also looking at Ford Connects. They're stubbier, but they're a little bit taller, so I believe I would have been able to stand up, but each Ford Connect person that I messaged, they would just not reply, and then it would sell really quickly. So I wasn't able to even go look at a Ford Connect. There was also a Chevy Express that I looked at. And there was also a GMC Vandura, which is the very first van I ever looked at, and that van was my second choice. That one was a really close contender, except when I looked at Tori, she was just a lot better, and so I decided to go with her. And then when I purchased my van, there was not that much work that needed to be done on it. We had a guy come over to do a van inspection, and she passed the inspection. And then here are just some things that I did over the months too, because it is from 1991. She is a little bit older, so there were a little bit of things that I had to do to just fix her up, make her in the best condition that she can be. When I bought her, the horn wasn't working, so I had, well, like I said, I'm very lucky to have a partner who knows how to do all of these things and fix these things up. So I didn't have to bring her to a shop and pay thousands of dollars to get all of these things done. Luckily, my partner and I were able to do them together. So I think the horn, it was just like, I think the fuse was loose, or it needed a new fuse for the horn. And then after that, it was a simple fix. The horn was working again. We replaced the air filter. I got new shocks in the front and the back. I also redid the back differential, so replaced that. And I also took care of my brakes because the brakes were a little bit weak. The front brake rotors, and doing a brake flush definitely helped make the brakes stronger. Okay, change of scenery because I had to go run an errand. But I guess it's more fitting to be talking about vans as I'm sitting in my van anyway. Another thing that I replaced is my van's battery. Just because the winters here are super cold, sometimes it will just kill your battery, so I put a new one in. That is all of the maintenance that I've done on my van so far. Now, how I take care of my van. I keep an eye on the oil because it is an older van. It does tend to burn a little bit rich in oil. It's not too bad, but especially on longer road trips, you definitely want to keep an eye on the oil, just so it doesn't run out and wreck your engine. So whenever I'm about to go for a road trip, I check the oil, I top it up, I do an oil change about every 5,000 kilometers or so. Sometimes a little bit more than that, just to keep the oil fresh and good for the engine. And then I always just check to make sure that the oil is filled up the correct amount, and if it's not, I just top it up a little bit. I also keep an eye on my coolant and my transmission, just to make sure that these are topped up so that my van can continue running smoothly. I usually check these maybe like every 2 weeks on a Sunday. I don't remember to do it every week, which would be optimal, especially when I begin traveling full time and driving more. I'll definitely be checking it every week, but for right now, I'm just checking it every 2 weeks or so. Another thing I do, actually I don't do it, but I really should do it more, is I try to regularly wash my van, especially during the winter time, to remove the salt and the dirt and the debris so that it doesn't stick to the paint and create rust. because the rest is not good. Another thing I do is I keep a log of all of the work that I've done. So for example, all the things that I listed, the air filter, the brakes, all of that stuff, I keep a note on my phone called van maintenance. Each time I do maintenance or work on my van, I type in what maintenance I did, the date, and how many kilometers my van was when I did that, just so I can keep track of everything. I track all of like my oil changes there as well. And it's also really helpful if you learn how to do oil changes yourself. That will save you like $100 every time. Which leads into my next point. Learn how to do some things by yourself, because it will save you a lot of money if you know how to fix little things here and there on your van, compared to if you take it to a shop every time something goes wrong. That can cost you a lot of money, especially if you're living on the road full time and your house is going to be in a shop. Where are you going to stay in the meantime, you know? If something goes a little bit wrong, try your best to diagnose it yourself, or maybe get help from a friend or family member who's maybe knowledgeable in that area, so that they can help you to the best of their ability. For example, if your horn is not working, it could be as simple as a fuse that you could go in and fix yourself, instead of taking your van to a shop and being homeless for however many hours they need to work on it and then paying that amount. It can just be really helpful to learn how to do things yourself. So that's pretty much everything that I had. One disclaimer that I do want to put in here is the type of van that you have will change the way that people interact with you. Because my van is old and it's from the early 90s, it tends to attract a lot of attention from older men who were around in the 90s and who remember my van when it was on the road more. And so I'll be filling up the gas station, or I'll be in a parking lot. It will get compliments from older men, which is fine. It's nice to have that conversation, but then it also gets a lot of stares from men. If people can tell that you have a build inside, it's going to invite people to want to ask questions about it and have conversations about it, because people are curious, and that's nice. It can be nice to talk about what you've built for yourself. Another thing is that because my van is old, it really affects the way that people treat me on the road. And driving my van is a completely different experience compared to when I had my Ford Focus. When people are driving with me on the road, I think they just see my van as something slow and old, even though it's not. I always ensure to drive the speed limit, sometimes even a little bit above the speed limit, but people will always, no matter how fast I'm going, they will speed around me, cut back into my lane right in front of me, and cut me off. And this happens on the highway, this happens in residential places near, like, in neighborhoods, like, it'll happen in the middle of an intersection. Like, people just drive pretty recklessly around my van, and it is pretty annoying, and I don't know why people just have this urge to just pass me so bad when I'm going the speed limit. But, for example, like, I don't know, if you're planning to get an older van, this might be something that you have to deal with. I know it probably happens to semis, it happens to RVs, and, you know, some vehicles are pretty heavy where you have to drive slower, and depending on the type of van you get, it might just naturally drive slower, also depending on what the weight of your van is. So that should also be something that you will have to adjust to and get used to. I definitely was not expecting it. Like, even though I go the speed limit, people are just in such a rush to get around me all the time, and I don't understand why, and sometimes it is a little bit dangerous. And that's everything. Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it down below. I always check my comments, so I will be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. And I really tried to list out every single thing that I could. So I hope this video was helpful, and thank you for watching.